Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that all the words after the first instance of the word "that" be replaced with Hana-Rawhiti Maipi-Clarke, Ngarewa-Packer and Rawiri Waititi be censured by the House for acting in a manner that could have the effect of intimidating a member of the House in the discharge of their duty. Mr. Speaker, it is right that this House interrogate the findings of the Privileges Committee concerning the conduct of MPs. We think this Parliament could lead the world in affirming how Indigenous MPs express ourselves in this House. To look at the cultural act that was performed in isolation of the injustice that led to the conduct is remiss of this House. It is our position that the Privileges Committee is being exploited to do the political bidding of government MPs, which is an approach we should all treat with disdain. The Green Party strongly opposes the suspension of Ms Ngarewa-Packer, Mr Waititi and Ms Maipi-Clarke as recommended by the committee. I invite the government parties to support my tabled amendments, which would instead remove suspension for all three MPs as a punishment and leave the penalty to censure. We would have preferred to pause the Privileges Committee proceedings while the newly established Tikanga Committee evaluates the incorporation of tikanga in Parliament. This would then allow the Privileges Committee to evaluate the conduct of MPs with any new standing orders that arise from this work. Mr Speaker, there are critical weak points with the proposals in the committee report. Let's start with an assertion by the chair of the committee that the conduct had prevented the vote being taken, which was simply incorrect as all parties had completed their vote. And yet the chair continued to state that inaccuracy. Now that in itself indicates some clutching to try and make the conduct seem worse than it actually was. Now the ruling of 21 days suspension for the co-leaders with the ruling of 7 days on top of 7 days already served by Ms Maipi-Clarke is severe and unprecedented and completely out of proportion to the breach of standing orders, especially when the action is taken in full context, and we must highlight the full context if this debate is to draw any respect. And just one example. We have former Prime Minister Mr Muldoon committing some pretty full-on offences, also not turning up to the Privileges Committee, and even then only getting a 3-day suspension. Just one of many examples of why this penalty does not fly. And the enduring democratic convention of the committee reaching consensus has been blown apart, with only the government members supporting. This makes these decisions blatantly partisan, something that this House should be passionately guarding against. The arbitrary nature of these penalties, unable to be linked rationally to any similar circumstance, leave this committee indefensible and vulnerable to attacks of racism because there is no credible explanation that is in keeping with any pattern or ruling or logic other than the fact that they are tangata whenua challenging the status quo of power. Now, the Clarks provided a fulsome historical context of like rulings, both here and from around the world, along with advice on what would be in keeping with good practice. The committee have gone against the Clarks' advice. So yes, Mr Speaker, the Speaker is right to want to have the committee recommendations scrutinised with the highest wisdom because it is the public trust of our democracy at stake that requires the utmost protection now more than ever. And even if, for argument's sake, even if we accept the suggested narrow interpretation of the rules by only the three government parties of the committee, the final rulings threaten to blow any pretence of a democratic process right out of the park. Now, Mr Speaker, I do want to speak to the fuller context of the conduct by those MPs, because this debate is actually bigger than just those MPs or any one party. The Greens are challenging not only the wafer-thin rationale that the committee is tying its findings to, we also challenge the very parameters that have been assumed in the committee's deliberations. Mr Speaker, what indication is there of a modern, democratic, mature, sophisticated and evolving House of Representatives than one that can adapt and progress with the times towards a House that actually does represent the diversity of its nation? Now, Mr Speaker, this House over the years has shown it can evolve. For example, including babies and breastfeeding in this House, including sign language interpretation, including te reo translation, inviting diverse prayers to open sittings, and then procedural changes like the way we ask oral questions and how we hold ministers to account. So, Mr Speaker, the Greens are challenging the very static parameters regarding conduct in this House, which is why we do not support calling for Te Pāti Māori MPs to apologise. We have to include the context of the Haka in this debate because it deserves stating that the Haka is used in many different ways for many different reasons and has long been a respected cultural expression. The particular Haka kamate, composed by Te Rauparaha of Ngāti Toa Rangatira, has particular resonance with what was being voted on at the time. In addressing the conduct of the members, we have to address the context of how the Haka kamate came to be used in the first place. Mr Speaker, the Treaty Principles Bill had come to an end of the first reading, and let me be clear, that bill was designed to provoke. The bill attacked the generosity of Māori despite nearly 200 years of injustice against us. It threatened generations of fundamental relationships where Māori and non-Māori have worked so hard to only just start getting on the same page. It distributed disinformation and bad faith discussion that directly harms Māori. It was political violence trying to uproot the heart of our country. The very least it deserved was that passionate haka. And I notice, Mr. Speaker, that of my entire party, my seat is the only seat that has unimpeded clear access to the floor. I was unable to be in the House that day. I do know how to haka. I did mine in my backyard with a Tino Rangatiratanga flag. When those with assumed power think their privilege is under threat, there is a tendency to scream victim. One needn't feel intimidated by the power of holding te mana I te tiriti in the face of futile attempts to denigrate it. So Greens maintain a rightful place for that cultural expression. Now, in the commentary, there has been some attempt to say that these judgments are not about the haka. But even with all the partisan, arbitrary, narrowly supported severity of these penalties, we still have insulting suggestions that this was not about the haka. Mr. Speaker, there is no credible way that the haka can be separated out from the judgments happening here. So I want to acknowledge the excellent work of Ricardo Menendez March at the committee in driving a focus on fair solutions. It is clear that the penalties recommended are all ego rather than sensible rationale, a partisan flex, which is the antithesis of what the committee is supposed to be. Mr. Speaker, the next generations will take such pity on us grasping our pearls in the place lest Māori be Māori in here. One day someone's going to look in the Hansard and hang their heads in shame or ridicule, looking at what we are doing, the absurdity of the penalties for doing the haka in this place. I want to state clearly, Mr. Speaker, the Greens call out this blatant power play that is on display, that is parading in disguise and upholding process. These dangerously precedent-setting, convention-destroying, consensus-ignoring, TDT trampling, racism whistling, democracy-mocking, narrowly supported recommendations from the Privileges Committee bring this House into more disrepute than any haka ever has.
Members.
And Simon Court did not interrupt Marama Davidson's speech, and Marama Davidson clearly wasn't referred to the Privileges Committee when she performed the haka in her backyard.
Well, she wasn't in the House, so therefore it didn't count.
That was an excellent use of 10 minutes.
Yes, absolutely. There's a reporter in the States, Rachel Maddow. I saw a video of hers within the last couple of days asking, what are the historians going to write about our country in 2025?
Oh.
I agree with her. What are our historians going to write about New Zealand, about Aotearoa in 2024 and 2025? This is an absolute shit show of a government, and I'm sorry that I have to keep saying it, but it
makes John Key's government look brilliant.
I'm seeing historians raising the alarm, to be honest. Now, what the whole point of what Marama is saying is that the agenda is very clear, and they can deny it all they like, but it's clear to everyone witnessing what's going on. Now, they can say it's not about the haka, but it is about the haka. They can say it's not about being Māori, but it is about being Māori. Mm-hmm. They can say all sorts of things, but it's clear from their actions what's motivating them.
Yeah, even my grandma sat there and said, that's way disproportionate of a punishment. You know, as a former secondary school principal who used to issue out punishments. But, you know, put it this way, I don't think she would have been allowed to suspend a kid for 21 days.
No.
You know, and I mean, and this is talking 1980s rules, not 1990s when you had school board, 1980s rules.
It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, Marama wasn't interrupted because she was on fire.
Yeah. And Simon Court probably would have ended up becoming more remembered of the menstrual cup situation.